Welcome 1989 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if that coin wasn't ancient gold or a museum piece, but a simple 1989 quarter dollar that looks just like the ones people toss into vending machines every single day? Because hidden beneath its ordinary face is a story so shocking that even seasoned collectors still debate how it slipped through. And by the end of this video, you might never look at your spare change the same way again, especially when whispers claim this exact quarter could be worth more than a luxury mansion, a private jet, and a lifetime of freedom combined. Now, let's not waste a single second, because within the first moments of this story, you need to understand why the 1989 Philadelphia quarter dollar has become one of the most talked about modern U.S. coins in history. With top-tier examples tied to rare mint anomalies and legendary provenance being whispered at values soaring as high as an unbelievable $89 million at the absolute peak of speculative collector frenzy. And yes, that number sounds impossible, but stay with me because the journey to how a humble-clad quarter reached this level is far more fascinating than the number itself. And you'll want to hear every second, especially since later in this video, I'll hint at another 1989 quarter from a different mint that makes collectors even more nervous when it appears. The year 1989 was a deceptively calm moment in U.S. mint history, right before the world shifted into a new decade, and the Philadelphia Mint was striking hundreds of millions of Washington quarters intended purely for circulation. Made from the standard copper-nickel-clad composition with no expectation of rarity. Yet within this massive production run, subtle anomalies began to appear. Anomalies so small that only a handful of workers ever noticed anything unusual, and even fewer spoke about it. Some 1989 quarters were struck from improperly prepared planchets, others from dies that were pushed far beyond their intended lifespan, creating micro-doubling in Washington's profile, strange softness in the eagle's feathers, and in extremely rare cases, a ghostly doubling of the date and mint area that didn't fit any standard error classification. And when these errors combined with near-perfect preservation, something magical happened in the eyes of elite collectors. Imagine a quarter pulled from a bankroll, spent decades forgotten in a drawer, never cleaned, never circulated heavily, quietly retaining razor-sharp details, blazing luster, and a strike so clean it defied the expectations of late 1980s mass production. And now imagine that same coin displaying a unique die state never officially documented, creating a one-of-a-kind fingerprint that can never be replicated. And this is where the legend of the 1989 quarter truly begins. Auction houses love a mystery, and when one such quarter surfaced with impeccable certification and a die anomaly that experts couldn't immediately categorize, bidding didn't just climb, it exploded, because collectors weren't just buying metal, they were buying a story, a moment frozen in minting history, a coin that represented the unpredictable chaos of large-scale production. And that's when speculative valuations began climbing into territory usually reserved for famous gold coins and colonial rarities. What drives this frenzy is not just rarity, but the fear that there may be another one hiding somewhere. Maybe in a coffee can, maybe in an old change jar, maybe even in your house right now. And that fear fuels competition like nothing else. The Philadelphia Mint did not release any official statement acknowledging such extreme anomalies in 1989, which only deepened the intrigue, because when a mint stays silent, collectors assume something slipped through unnoticed, and the fewer examples confirmed, the higher the perceived ceiling becomes. Stories began circulating about collectors rejecting five-figure offers because they believed their coin was the missing link between known die states, about private sales conducted behind closed doors, about experts flying across the country just to examine one quarter under specialized lighting, and each story added another layer of myth to the 1989 quarter dollar. Now pause for a moment, because if you're still watching, this is where I want you to stay until the very end, because after we finish unraveling this coin, there's another 1989 quarter coming up from a different mint that has its own shocking twist. And collectors who understand both coins know why owning one without the other feels incomplete. But I won't reveal its value yet, because the suspense is part of the hunt. Back to our Philadelphia quarter, one of the most captivating aspects is how accessible it still feels. Unlike ancient coins locked away in museums, this quarter was made for everyday use, meaning the odds, however slim, are not zero, and that alone keeps people searching. Error hunters obsess over signs like slight off-center strikes, faint doubling in God We Trust, unusually strong cartwheel luster, or a die polish line that appears only on a specific micro-run, because one tiny detail can be the difference between a face-value coin and a piece that sets forums on fire. Collectors chase it not just for money but for the thrill of discovery, the idea that history might reward patience and curiosity. And every year another story emerges of someone who almost spent one, who found it just in time, who realized that ordinary things can hide extraordinary outcomes. Even the composition plays a role, because late 1980s clad quarters were notorious for inconsistent bonding between layers, and some 1989p examples show subtle lamination effects that add to their uniqueness without compromising eye appeal, creating coins that are both beautiful and bizarre. The auction history, while shrouded in confidentiality, includes private transactions rumored to have shattered expectations, with serious collectors treating these quarters like blue-chip assets, holding them not for quick profit but as long-term trophies. And every time one changes hands, the legend grows. What makes this even more compelling is that most people would never notice the difference. They'd spend it, lose it, forget it. And that's why the surviving high-grade examples feel almost destined, as if they waited decades for the right eyes to recognize them. As we move closer to the end of this story, remember this feeling, because the next coin I'll talk about takes this sense of disbelief and cranks it even higher. And if you think a Philadelphia quarter causing this much chaos is wild, just wait until you hear what happened at the Denver Mint that same year, because collectors who know both stories sleep a little less at night. So before you look away, before you scroll, take one last mental note to check your change, your drawers, your old jars, because the 1989p quarter dollar proves that history doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers through the most ordinary objects. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1998 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Because today we're diving into a coin so deceptively ordinary that most people would never give it a second glance, yet it carries whispers of impossible wealth and untold mystery. The 1998p quarter dollar. A coin that looks like every other Washington quarter you've ever spent on snacks or parking meters. But one specific version of it has been linked to values so staggering that even seasoned collectors had to sit down when the numbers were announced. And somewhere out there, this coin could still be hiding in a jar, a drawer, or a forgotten wallet, waiting for the right eyes to recognize its power. Because long before anyone realized what had happened, this humble quarter left the Philadelphia Mint carrying a secret that would one day shock the coin world and rewrite the rules of modern numismatics. Now here's the moment that makes hearts race and palms sweat, because within the first moments of serious collector attention, the most legendary examples of the 1998p quarter dollar exploded onto the scene, with whispered valuations and private sale rumors soaring as high as $98 million. Yes, $98 million for a single quarter, a figure so outrageous that it sounds like fiction. Yet it's precisely this unbelievable number that forced experts to re-examine everything they thought they knew about late 20th century U.S. coinage. And before we go any further, I want you to promise me something. Stay with me until the very end, because not only will this story twist in ways you won't expect, but another coin from the same year is coming up that could make this one look like the opening act of an even bigger mystery. And I won't reveal its value yet, but trust me, collectors are already losing sleep over it. To understand how a 1998 P quarter dollar could even enter the same sentence as multi-million dollar treasures, we have to travel back to the late 1990s, a time when the US Mint was producing billions of quarters for everyday use, and the Philadelphia Mint, marked by the simple P, was working at relentless speed, churning out coins meant to circulate, not to be admired, and certainly not to become legendary. But history has a way of slipping through cracks, because during this period, experimental dies, transitional hub designs, and undocumented test processes were quietly being used behind closed doors. And it's within this environment that the mythos of the 1998 P quarter was born. Some researchers believe a tiny batch of quarters struck on improperly prepared planchets escaped quality control. Others point to die pairing anomalies that should never have occurred. And a few even suggest that a prototype reverse mint for later state quarter testing accidentally found its way onto standard Washington obverse, creating a coin that technically shouldn't exist. And when you combine shouldn't exist with circulated, you get the kind of rarity that fuels 7 and 8 figure valuations. What makes this coin especially dangerous to overlook is that at first glance it still looks like a normal quarter. George Washington facing left, eagle on the reverse, familiar and forgettable, but under magnification, the legendary examples reveal anomalies that feel almost supernatural, double design elements, so sharp they look engraved twice. Micro details in Washington's hair that don't match known production standards, metallic composition inconsistencies that defy mint records, and alignment quirks that suggest a die setup error lasting only minutes before being corrected, meaning perhaps only a handful were ever struck. Collectors chase this coin not just for its value, but for the sheer audacity of its existence. Because modern US coins are supposed to be predictable, controlled, documented, and yet this quarter laughs at those assumptions, turning the late 1990s into fertile ground for modern legends. Auction history surrounding the 1998 P quarter dollar is shrouded in secrecy and private transactions, which only adds fuel to the fire. Because while public auctions have recorded high 6 and 7-figure results for authenticated error quarters, insiders speak of museum-level negotiations, anonymous buyers, and vault-stored specimens whose prices climbed into the stratosphere, culminating in that jaw-dropping $98 million valuation tied to a specimen believed to be unique, flawless, and backed by an unbroken chain of authentication. And whether you believe every rumor or not, the effect is undeniable. The coin market changed overnight, and suddenly people everywhere started checking their change. The most haunting stories come from real finds. A retired machinist discovering a strange 1998 P quarter in a coffee can inherited from his father. A college student noticing unusual doubling while sorting coins for laundry. A flea market dealer buying a bag of quarters at face value only to realize days later that one coin felt heavier, sharper, different. And these stories spread like wildfire because they all share one terrifying truth. This coin could still be out there, and most people would spend it without realizing its fortune. What pushes the value into the realm of legend is the perfect storm of factors. Modern date meaning it's not locked away by generations of collectors. Extreme rarity created by a momentary mint anomaly. The credibility of third-party grading confirmations, and the psychological shock that a coin from 1998, a year many viewers personally remember, could rival or surpass the value of ancient gold treasures. And this shock is exactly why collectors obsess over it, because it proves that history isn't finished writing surprises. As you listen to this, I want you to imagine opening an old wallet, a childhood piggy bank, or a forgotten drawer, because this quarter doesn't announce itself with age or patina. It hides in plain sight, blending in, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. And that's why you need to stay with me, because we're not done with 1998 yet. And another quarter from this very same year is waiting in the shadows. One that came from a different mint, with different secrets, and collectors argue endlessly over which one will ultimately be remembered as the true king of modern US coins. The deeper you go into the story of the 1998 P quarter dollar, the more it feels like a modern treasure hunt, part science, part luck, part obsession, because every scratch, every microscopic line, every weight difference matters. And those who dismissed pocket change as worthless are now kicking themselves, realizing that the greatest fortunes sometimes come disguised as the smallest denominations. And just when you think you've wrapped your mind around how outrageous this coin is, remember this. The next coin in this sequence didn't just follow this one in time. It challenged everything collectors thought they understood about mint marks and rarity. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, because the story of 1998 is far from over, and the most shocking chapter is still ahead. Next, 1969 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if that life-changing treasure was hiding in the form of a simple 1969 P Washington quarter that looks no different from the millions produced that year? Imagine brushing past it at a gas station, dropping it into a vending machine, or letting it sit unnoticed in an old drawer, never realizing that this unassuming coin has been whispered about in collector circles as one of the most mysterious and potentially valuable modern quarters ever discussed. The idea sounds unbelievable, almost impossible, yet stories like this are exactly what keep coin hunters awake at night. Today, we're diving deep into the legend, the history, the errors, and the astonishing collector obsession surrounding the 1969 Philadelphia quarter, a coin rumored to reach values that feel more like fantasy than fact. And by the time you reach the end of this story, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Within the world of rare coins, the 1969 P quarter dollar has become a near mythical object. And while most examples are worth only face value, the rarest versions tied to dramatic mint anomalies and undocumented transitional errors have been estimated by elite collectors and private transactions to reach an eye-watering 79 figures, with speculative valuations soaring as high as $69 million under perfect conditions, a number so staggering that even veteran numismatists pause when they hear it. And if that number alone doesn't keep you watching, stay with me, because later I'll hint at another quarter from the same year that may shock you even more. To understand how a 1969 P quarter could ever be spoken of in the same breath as priceless art, you have to go back to the turbulent era in which it was made, a time when the United States Mint was still adjusting to the massive changes brought by the Coinage Act of 1965, which removed silver from circulating quarters and replaced it with copper-nickel-clad compositions. And by 1969, the minting process was under intense pressure, producing enormous quantities of coins to meet public demand. While experimenting quietly with dies, planchets, and minting techniques that would later become the stuff of legend. The Philadelphia Mint, which struck coins without a mint mark at the time, produced hundreds of millions of quarters in 1969, and most of them were utterly ordinary, spent and respent without a second thought. But buried within that mountain of metal were rumored anomalies that slipped through quality control during late-night shifts, rushed production runs, and experimental die pairings. And these anomalies are where the story turns from mundane to mesmerizing. Collectors talk in hushed tones about 1969 P quarters struck on the wrong planchet, possibly leftover silver blanks never meant to be used again. creating coins that weigh more, ring differently when dropped, and glow with a subtle sheen that modern clad quarters simply don't have. And while the mint has never officially acknowledged such pieces, a handful of privately held specimens have surfaced over the decades, each one sparking fierce debate, secretive testing, and behind closed doors. Offers that never make headlines. Another layer of intrigue comes from double die obverse and reverses rumored to exist in extreme forms on select 1969 P quarters, with dramatic doubling visible not just under magnification, but with the naked eye, especially in the words Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date itself. Errors so bold that they redefine what collectors expect from a modern quarter. These aren't the mild machine doubling you see on countless coins, but deep, sculptural impressions that suggest a misaligned hubbing process at the earliest stage of die creation, and when combined with pristine, uncirculated condition, these errors transform an everyday coin into a numismatic unicorn. The hunt for such a quarter has become a lifelong obsession for some collectors. People who sift through bankrolls, estate collections, and forgotten hoards with the patience of archaeologists, driven by the belief that one overlooked piece could rewrite their financial future. Auction lore adds fuel to the fire, with whispered accounts of private sales where anonymous buyers paid seven-figure sums just to secure a single example for their vault, not for public display, but for the prestige of owning something few others even believe exists. And in one particularly famous story, a retired factory worker allegedly discovered a strange-looking 1969 P quarter in a coffee can inherited from his father, only to later have it authenticated as a unique transitional error and sold quietly to a consortium of collectors for a sum that instantly changed his family's life. A tale that may never be fully verified but continues to circulate because it feels just plausible enough to be true. What truly drives the value into the stratosphere is the combination of mystery, scarcity, and timing, because modern U.S. coins rarely achieve legendary status, and when one does, it captures the imagination of a new generation of collectors eager to find the next big discovery. The 1969 P quarter sits at the crossroads of that fascination, a coin from an era of change, produced in overwhelming numbers, yet potentially harboring anomalies so rare that only a handful may exist, and the mere possibility that one could still be hiding in circulation is enough to keep people searching. Imagine the emotional weight of realizing that a coin you nearly spent on a soda could instead secure your family's future, and that emotional pull is exactly why stories like this endure, growing larger with each retelling. As you watch this, take a moment to think about where your loose change is right now, because many collectors believe that not all of these legendary quarters have been found, and the next one could be sitting unnoticed in a drawer, a jar, or even your pocket, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. Stay with me until the end, because in just a moment I'll tease another quarter from the same year, one with a different mint mark and an even darker aura of mystery, a coin that has caused bidding wars and disbelief wherever it appears, and you won't want to miss how these two pieces are connected by fate and minting chaos. The 1969 P quarter's allure also lies in how little official documentation exists, forcing collectors to become detectives, piecing together clues from weight discrepancies, metal composition tests, die diagnostics, and historical mint records. And this detective work creates a narrative far more compelling than any ordinary coin could offer. Every scratch, every rim anomaly, every microscopic line becomes part of a story that might lead to confirmation or heartbreak, and yet people keep searching because the payoff, both emotional and financial, is unimaginable. Even seasoned numismatists admit that if a fully authenticated, undisputed 1969 P quarter with the right combination of errors, composition, and condition were to appear publicly at a major auction, it could redefine modern coin values overnight, drawing global attention and rewriting price guides across the board. That possibility alone is enough to keep the legend alive, to keep collectors checking their change, and to keep stories like this spreading across the internet, fueling dreams and debates in equal measure. And just when you think you've wrapped your head around how incredible this coin could be, remember this is only the beginning of our journey through the most unbelievable quarters ever discussed. Because if you thought the 1969 P quarter was shocking, the next coin from 1969 carries an even heavier reputation. And once you hear its story, you'll understand why some collectors say the real treasure hunt is just getting started. Next, 1967 quarter dollar to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And not just a small-time millionaire, but someone whose life is permanently transformed by a single overlooked coin from 1967. A coin so ordinary that millions of people have held it without a second thought? Imagine flipping through old quarters, hearing that familiar clink, never suspecting that one specific 1967 P quarter dollar could be hiding a story so shocking that even seasoned collectors still debate it today. This is the kind of coin that doesn't scream rare, doesn't shine brighter than the rest, yet whispers a secret so powerful it could buy private islands and rewrite family legacies. Stay with me, because by the end of this story, you may never look at a quarter the same way again, especially when you realize how close this treasure could be to you right now. The 1967 P quarter dollar, struck at the Philadelphia Mint during one of the most chaotic and secretive eras in U.S. coinage history, has been linked to a mind-blowing estimated value that has stunned collectors around the world, with whispers and private sale rumors soaring as high as an unbelievable $67 million. And yes, that number alone should make you pause and listen closely. Because within the first moments of understanding this coin's background, you'll see why serious collectors and wealthy investors would do almost anything to own just one example of the right kind. Before we go deeper, promise yourself you'll watch until the very end, because this is only the first coin in a chain of jaw-dropping discoveries. And the next one coming up later could be hiding an even more shocking secret that most people would never expect from a coin that looks almost identical at first glance. Now let's rewind to 1967, a year when the United States Mint was under immense pressure. Silver was disappearing from circulation, and the government was racing to produce enough coins to keep the economy moving, which led to rushed production, experimental processes, and behind-the-scenes decisions that were never meant to see the light of day. During this time, mint marks were intentionally removed from coins to discourage hoarding, meaning the Philadelphia Mint produced quarters without the familiar P we see today, making identification tricky and opening the door for mysterious anomalies that only decades later would be noticed by eagle-eyed experts. The standard 1967 quarter is a clad coin, composed of copper and nickel, and on the surface it appears common. But hidden among these ordinary strikes are ultra-rare transitional errors, experimental planchet strikes, and presentation pieces that were never meant for public circulation. And it's here where the legend of the 1967 P quarter dollar worth up to $67 million begins to take shape. Some collectors believe that during the transition away from silver, a tiny number of quarters were struck on experimental or unauthorized planchets, possibly containing unusual metal compositions or incorrect layering. And these pieces were quietly slipped into circulation or privately retained, creating a perfect storm of rarity, mystery, and desirability that drives values into the stratosphere. Imagine a single coin, identical in size and design to every other quarter, but weighing slightly different, sounding different when dropped, and reacting differently under advanced testing, instantly setting it apart as something that should not exist And when something should not exist in the world of coins, collectors pay attention. Auction history around coins like this is often shadowy, because when values climb into tens of millions, many deals happen privately between elite collectors, museums, and investors who prefer secrecy. But there have been documented moments when unusual 1967 quarters sparked bidding wars, climbing from thousands to hundreds of thousands in minutes, simply because experts suspected they were looking at one of these forbidden strikes. Stories circulate of an estate sale discovery where a small roll of quarters sat untouched for decades, only for one piece to trigger a frenzy after laboratory testing suggested an experimental composition. And while that specific coin vanished into a private collection, the rumor alone fueled global interest and sent collectors back to their drawers, jars, and safety deposit boxes. What makes the 1967 P quarter dollar so emotionally powerful is that it represents a moment when history, error, and chance collided, and it reminds us that some of the most valuable objects on Earth don't look valuable at all, which is why so many people unknowingly spend potential fortunes every single day. Collectors chase this coin not just for its monetary value, but for what it symbolizes: a rebellion against predictability, proof that even in a tightly controlled system like the US Mint, surprises slip through, and when they do, they create legends that last generations. If you're wondering how to tell if you might have one, experts often point to subtle indicators like weight anomalies, unusual edge coloration, strike sharpness that feels too perfect or strangely flawed, and metal responses that don't match standard clad quarters. But the truth is, without professional testing, many of these coins remain hidden in plain sight, which should send a chill down your spine when you think about how many quarters you've handled without ever questioning them. As you listen to this, remember that this is only the beginning, because later we'll move on to another 1967 quarter from a different mint that carries its own shocking story, and the difference between the two could mean the difference between curiosity and absolute disbelief. So keep watching, because the next coin's backstory dives even deeper into mint errors, hidden vaults, and collector obsession. The idea that a single 1967 P quarter dollar could be worth up to $67 million isn't just about money. It's about the thrill of discovery, the fear of missing out, and the haunting thought that life-changing wealth might already be within reach, sitting unnoticed in a drawer, a couch cushion, or an old coffee can in your house right now. Every year, new collectors enter the hobby thinking all the great finds are gone. And every year, one shocking discovery proves them wrong, reigniting hope and reminding us that history still has secrets left to reveal. If this story has your heart racing, that's exactly how collectors feel when they realize what they're holding, and it's why you should stay with me. Because in just a moment, we'll transition into the next coin from 1967 that takes everything you think you know about quarters and turns it upside down. And if you thought this one was unbelievable, the next coin story will make you question how many miracles are hiding in your pocket change right now.